This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and today I'm joined by Dr. Ramin Farhood and Dr. Kirk Shepard, two leaders shaping the future of oncology and co-authors of Voices of Oncology. Together, they co-founded MAPS, the Medical Affairs Professional Society, a global community advancing the role of medical professionals in life sciences. In their book, Voices of Oncology, they highlight how science, culture, and collaboration are redefining cancer treatment. And through OVN, they continue to build a global platform for innovation and shared progress. Dr. Farhood, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Awesome. And Dr. Shepard, welcome to the podcast as well.
Thank you very much, Joe.
So, Dr. Shepard, I'll start with you and talk about sort of the idea for the book and sort of like the gap that you guys sort of get into, this gap in oncology drug development. Was that essentially the motivation for this?
It was. In fact, Ramin and I lived the theme of the book together. We've been partners in drug development for probably around 10 years, I think, Ramin. And in the beginning, we realized that we were divided into silos. Everybody was learning and approaching drug development from their own discipline or silos. And that's within industry. Then you go outside of industry, you have academians, you have patients, patient advocacy. The gap was even bigger as far as the communication. So we realized something had to be done. In fact, even at that time, we started a little group called what we call the Silo Busters, and we're trying to get people to talk more and to work together more. The company I went to later, we had an educational program, and the part that they wanted the most about was to learn more about their partners. How can I be a better partner? How can we work better together? So we've lived this theme for 10 years or so and wanted to do something to improve it.
It has been 10 years, and I think it's maybe more, even 12 or 13, Kirk. I mean, one of the things that we immediately start realizing was that each function brings in their own expertise, their own experience, and that expertise and experience forms their perspective, which is incredibly important, right? In order for that function to be successful in what they do, and in order to really realize the full success, we have to work together. We had to make sure that we understand each other's perspective, and not just knowing about it, but also going a little bit deeper and understanding what each other's perspective is. And based on that perspective, being able to also help us to do a better job in what we do in our own function. And this was definitely something that I wouldn't say it was 100% missing, depending on the team that you were working with, but it was definitely had a lot of potential to be optimized.
Wow. And Dr. Shepard, I mean, you guys are both, you're in the medical field, but you're also business people. So when it gets to business, we talk about success. How do you define success for Voices of Oncology? Is it collaboration, more outcomes, something else? Did you have a definition from the jump of what success looked like?
Yeah, I think success to us looks like if we can show improved collaboration, whatever those metrics may be, of people talking together, learning more about what each other does. And so when I learn what you do, I become a better person at what I do. And that's what it's all about, because we have a lot of societies that teach us about the science of oncology in this case, but we really don't have anybody who's focusing on how do we become a better person as far as drug development. So we're measuring it by that. And we hope also in the future, the outcomes would be that we find that review times, the times to get data into the agencies, then out to the patients is shorter. So we're very excited about trying to do this. I mean, it's similar to what the Apollo 11 did. They brought together people. It's commonly used as a business example. In our case, it's a scientific example of how they brought together experts who were completely separate in the past and then came together, trust each other, communicated together, went over lessons learned of what was wrong. And most importantly, at the top, they had a mission and a vision that they all agreed on. And I think that's important for every pharmaceutical company, with the leaders to show everybody, this is our mission. Let's all be aligned.
And Dr. Farhood, Dr. Shepard alluded to sort of like the moonshot analogy, which you write about in the book.
Right.
And for folks not in your industry, when you use the word moonshot, it almost means like, oh, it's a miracle. It's a shot in the dark. Can you explain some context as to why this is such a moonshot?
It seems that way on the surface, but if you look at any success, even beyond the moonshot, it has to do with the relationship that the team has together, right? The commitment that the team has together, not just what they do in their own function, in their own area. It goes way beyond that. And that understanding and that collaborative partnership, right, it would definitely helps you to get to the next level of thinking across the enterprise, thinking across your own function, and not just being focused on what you do on a daily basis. My turning point was when I realized that the tactical success was not really enough. And I've seen that a lot of other mentors, a lot of other great leaders in our industry, when they start thinking about across the functions and try and also start thinking about across the enterprise, bringing others into their thinking and their today, as opposed to just going very vertically deep, it makes a whole lot of difference. And moonshot was definitely one example of it. And we see that in our industry too. It's probably less than what we would like to see, and that's the whole success that we are looking for with starting with this book, kind of educating everybody. Number one, what does everybody does? There's about a good 20 to 25 different functions in oncology drug development. In most of the drug development, it's not even specific to oncology, and there's probably another 20 or 30 sub functions under each one. You can imagine we're talking about somewhere between 300 or 400 functions that they have to work in harmony, in coordination, and that's not an easy task, because it's hard to kind of do your own job, let alone thinking about what other your neighbors and your other cross-functional teams are doing. And that's what we're trying to break.
You know, Joe, the moonshot analogy has become more real to me as years goes along. Because to me, I mean, when I was younger, hitting the moon, landing on it, walking on it was, wow, this seemed like to be impossible, okay? And we did it. Now with cancer, it's almost the same, except we've got a lot of moons out there. This isn't what we thought in the beginning. When I was in training, Dr. DeVita had the goal that we'd have 50% of cancers cured, excluding skin cancers, by the year 2000. We're not close to that. We made a lot of progress, but because we found out that there's no silver bullet for all of cancer to cure it right now. We're looking at genetic separation of the tumors as far as different types of lung cancers, of breast cancers. It isn't just one. So in other words, for me, it becomes even a bigger chore now as we think about the divisions of all the cancers into what we need to cure for the future.
Well, Dr. Shepard, I will say you're not that old. You were probably like a baby during the space race, so don't give yourself no credit that you were living through it. You're not an ancient, Dr. Shepard. You have a lot of life left in you. So I want to get into, because obviously you guys are the authors of the book, but there were a lot of collaborators, over 30, I believe, in the book. So Dr. Farhood, I'll start with yourself, because I know in medicine, famously there's like, when you go to a doctor, you're like, oh, I'm going to go get a second opinion. Or when there's a scientist, I'm like, okay, we're going to get this peer reviewed. So not everyone always thinks the same. Of all the folks you talked to for the book, was there a perspective that surprised you? You're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or was like, oh, let me look more into that.
There was, I think one of the most surprising to me thing was that the fact that we reached out to 33 authors, contributors, and every single one of them not only realized the problem that we were talking about, and they reinforced the fact that, yes, we are in isolation. Everybody does a great job. They do really important thing. That's not to say that the functions are not doing that, but also they all basically said, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of this movement. That was, to me, quite honestly, it was very surprising, because these folks are executives. They hold very high positions in our industry, and time is incredibly scarce for them. And the fact that they were willing to work with us, write a chapter on a specific different areas within their expertise was very surprising. At the same time, it was very encouraging and inspiring that they were willing to give their time and make a difference and contribute to the overall drug development. The other thing that was also a good surprise is that the theme, everybody kind of pretty much talked about the 4 pillars. And Kirk and I have lived it. We used to have 5, and we got to 4. And it's not about whether it's 3 or 4 or 5, but everyone talked about, the leadership and the strategy as one of the core fundamentals in what we do. Generating evidence and bringing data to the patient, to the community. That was incredibly important. Communicating that data, communication of that evidence was important. And most importantly was also this partnership, which kind of across every single one of these pillars that we talked about. And the foundation was the enablers, which is the like the compliance or the operations or human resources, all these other groups that are actually part of this team the team is not just one key area or two or three functions, is all of these together working. And that thinking that I think Kirk and I, we actually lived, and we thought, well, maybe this is us and maybe a few other people, was exactly the same thing that everybody was thinking. And that was surprising to me.
I was really surprised. Every one of them talked about how important the patient was in their work. Now think about it. Okay, for a doctor, that's kind of, you would think that. But for people, let's say, who are in regulatory or market access or whatever, they all talked about the patient has become more and more a part of the equation for developing good drugs. That made me very happy because that's something Ramin and I have always believed in. The other thing I was really surprised about is how early everybody thought they should be brought into the process. Everybody wants to be a part of it. They don't want to wait around. Commercial, that's included. They don't want to wait around till the drug's finished and take it out and communicate with the patients. They want to be part of the development. Now that became difficult because we, in the beginning, thought, well, we'll put the chapters in order of how they sequence as far as drug development. They all come together in the beginning. So what we did is we put it in alphabetical order. That's the only way we could do it. We couldn't say that you come first, you second, or there was no sort of priority that this is the most important of all of the disciplines and this is second and third. We just put it in alphabetical order because of the group effect that they had, that they wanted to be a part of drug development as early as possible.
It's sort of like one of these big blockbuster movies when everyone's a big star. You're like, I guess we can't put anyone on top of it. All right, we're going old school alphabet, guys. Here we go.
That really is.
Oh, there you go.
That's
And they're all stars to us. I should say that, Joe. They are the stars. We interviewed, we edited, we helped to write with the Forbes writers, but they are the stars. So, and we want to emphasize that.
Yeah. And Dr. Shepard, earlier you mentioned about silos, and I always like to play devil's advocate when it comes to silos because I think for many times silos are a good thing. Like I'll give you an example. Like the company I work in has publishing, has marketing, has podcasting. The publishing people don't want me going into their silo and be like, hey, what's going on in there? You guys doing all right? Like, and vice versa. So I think there has been sort of this theme that like all silos are bad, but I understand what you're saying about your silo busting. So tell me about like, so I was telling you some of the good things about being a silo. Like you have people, you could black out the noise in a silo, but what are some of the damaging parts of this kind of silo thinking?
Well, you have to be careful. Just because I let you into my silo and I teach you about what I'm doing doesn't mean I want you involved. Right. You may learn from coming into my silo that you don't belong there. And that's important because I think a lot of people, and you see it in the book, think we should have a stronger partnership between this discipline and this discipline, but maybe that's not what everybody wants. So having a door in a silo to come through when you're invited and talk about that stuff, where should we work together in our silos and where shouldn't we, is also important so we don't waste time.
That is so true. I mean, you brought up a good point, Joe. The silos are incredibly important because I have to know, and I have to be really good at what I do. And when I say I, not necessarily me personally, but also the function as well, right? If you're not even there, then you shouldn't even be thinking out and reaching out to the other groups, right? And try to kind of collaborate. So that's really important. But that's just the entry ticket. That's what we are talking about here, right? Of course, you got to know what you're doing and you have to be really good at it. And it's not, and just like what Kirk said, it's not to butt into everybody else's now function and have an opinion about it because they are already expert in what they're doing. What you're looking for is that what are that common ground? What are the overlaps? What do I need to be thinking about in my day-to-day work or in my function? Right? And have them in my mind as well. So it doesn't become a relay race that you go phase by phase. It's not sequential that you finish something, your project or whatever you were supposed to do, and then you hand it off to the next guy and the next group and the next group. That's where it creates delays. The silos, and I experienced this, for many years, and I see, and I'm consulting with a lot of companies and I still see it, that the silos delays and creates waste of time, energy, budget, right? That's the area that we're talking about, the silo busters, right? And every time there's a delay, and especially in cancer and oncology, you're talking about, it's a lot at stake here. You're talking about people's life, talking about the caregiver's life and their quality of life. So every delay that we have, right, it creates a delay for the treatment for the patient. at the end of the day. And that's where we were focusing on and trying to kind of minimize that.
Nice. All right, and Dr. Shepard, you mentioned earlier about patient voice. Let's go there a little bit. Let's talk about this disconnect between the patient and these companies developing things for the patient. What's the biggest issue there?
I think, again, is bringing patients in early. When you're first talking about a compound, what is the most important thing that we can develop for this compound that would be important to you, the patient? And a lot of times people think, oh, well, they don't know the science or anything. Well, no, wait a minute. It may depend on even the delivery. An IV form of this drug would not be good. That means you have to come in from your home to get it. We need to think of something as far as a different type of delivery. It would be sub-Q, perhaps they could take home. So it's that type of insight that really helps us a lot as far as drug development. And this is what I love about our R&D preclinical chapter. He just talks about how important the patient is. They talk to the patient about everything about the drug. What's been troubling about the current treatments you have in this category? It may be side effects. It may be lack of effect. So again, early entry, especially the patient. And I think the good thing about the patient chapter, it gives people ideas to think about, oh, so this is how we could bring the patient in. Maybe they haven't thought about it in this way. Even bring patients in as far as the writing of the papers. What's important as far as the perspectives you present with the papers? So to me, that's one of the biggest messages of the book is the entry of the patient into helping us develop drugs.
No, 100%. I mean, we get so busy sometimes that we forget why we're doing everything we're doing, right? There's about 3 million people professionally in drug development all across. And we estimate about 1/3 to 1/4 of that is just in oncology drug development. Everything we do is for the patients. Everything we do for the patients. But we get so busy in our day-to-day stuff, right? And all of our own deadlines and deliverables, everything else, that sometimes, and I think companies have gotten a lot better than this in the past decade or even longer than that. But we still have a long way to go. And as Kirk was mentioning, getting their insights, getting them involved early on, right? Because everything we do at the end of the day, it's really for them. And that insights that they have, they are actually going through what it is that we want to treat. And that makes a lot of difference. And you see drug over drug that the companies that are bringing patients and have a voice in the patient early on, very, very early on, are the companies that have the most successful compounds. And it gives it really directions. And believe it or not, the patients are incredibly smart and they're very scientifically savvy, right? Especially these days, there's so much information out there, right? Good and bad, but they're smart enough, especially with the support of advocacy groups. There's so many different filters that they go through that they get the information and they know what they're talking about. That's incredibly important to think in the entire process.
Wow. And Dr. Farhood, let's talk about speed a little bit here because I think for most people, I think we're all, even if you're not in the industry, are aware of the research and development, how long it takes, the cost of it, just the length of time. And then fast forward to 2020, Project Warp Speed, we saw incredible amounts of work done in a short amount of time to develop those mRNA vaccines. Tell me about this whole idea of trial eligibility, the length of things take. Going back to our patient point, being able to get these compounds to the patients. Where are we now when it comes to the speed of which we are maneuvering in this world?
Right. I think, listen, I mean, first of all, things are getting faster and faster all the time. I was looking at an article the other day, and in the past 4 or 5 years, depending on what source you look at, there has been 75 cancer drugs approved. And these are just for new indications. And I'm only talking about even FDA. And there's probably another 150 to a couple of hundred additional label extension, right? That has also been approved. And this is the FDA. If you look at the global level, it's even larger than that. My point is that if you look at past 4 or 5 years, that's almost one drug per month, right? That is coming to the market. And this is one area that we really wanted to focus on in oncology. So the speed is there, but the speed also has to be in balance with the science, right? And science is not necessarily always black and white. Sometimes you do a study and it's not quite telling you this way or that way. And then you have to do a little bit more data generation and clinical trials and to find out even more, right? Not all of your hypotheses come to reality. There's a lot of the things that we do, especially when they're innovative, there's a lot of unknown there, and it's not just the companies; it's the whole ecosystem, right? They are the thought leaders, they are the oncologists that are great in what they do, and those are all of those things coming together is the one that takes a little bit more time than you would you would like. But definitely, this is something that is getting faster and faster. And I don't know, Kirk, in your experience, how is that going?
Oh, it's unbelievable. And this is why oncology is so important as far as this concept of teamwork. Because in the last year, it was under the creative leadership of the FDA and Rick Pazder, they've developed procedures called like RTOR, real-time oncology review. That's when a drug in cancer can be reviewed rolling. And as you don't wait for the traditional landmarks, and some of the drugs have been approved in 3 to 4 months after being submitted to the FDA. This is the kind of energy, the creative type of processes that need to be developed. So now think back to our silos. If you are knocking on the door of, let's say, commercial, or somebody will be teaching people about our drug, and you say, we're going into phase 2 with this drug, and they're going to, hey, don't bother me right now. Phase 2, I know you got to go through phase 3, and we've got some time still to develop our products. What the oncology division has done sometimes is allow you to approve the drug on a provisional basis with just phase 2 data. So in other words, everybody better be ready to go. So that's why oncology is so important now as far as this concept of everybody staying in communication and when they need to come together as a team. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be caught with an approval of the drug and you're not ready to go out to the patients.
All right, Dr. Farhood, since we are doing a business podcast, we are binded by law to talk about AI. We must. It's like they will not let us publish this podcast unless we start talking about AI. So let's get into the AI of it and everything we're talking about in pharmaceutical development. What's it look like now? And what do you think it's going to look like in the future? And Dr. Shepard, I want to get your take on this as well. But Dr. Farhood first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry, our industry, is not necessarily very well known to be the first adopters of technology. But I know that AI has been around for years now, at least a good few years. And now it's at the beginning that AI is kind of being adopted in our industry, especially in the work that I do in medical affairs and global medical affairs, working with companies and consulting with them. AI, we're using the AI to make sure that, all the articles and all the information and all the data that is there, the big data that is there, it helps us to kind of go through it much faster and start making sense of it. At the end of the day, you're still going to have somebody that is going to need to review it, making sure it makes sense. So that's helping quite a bit. Kirk and I, we were on a call with somebody that their whole company is focusing on AIs, trying to predict what should be the endpoint, the primary endpoint, the secondary endpoint for clinical trials based on all the information and the big data that already exists. So you almost have a predictive analysis of what could work and what would be the probability of approval and bringing a product in the market versus something else that we didn't know because it was just so much that it would be almost impossible for humans to go through and dig all of that information out. It's definitely something that I think it's becoming more and more relevant, and more companies are even having functions and divisions that are focusing on AI and bringing technology to drug development.
Wow. And Dr. Shepard, it's funny. I was just talking to someone about this because a clip popped up on my TikTok of a 60 Minutes interview from 20 years ago with Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix. And they were talking about the future of the company. This is when it was a DVD by mail company.
Yes.
And during the entirety of this piece, it was like maybe a 15-minute piece, Dr. Shepard, not one time did they use the word streaming. They kept talking about downloading movies.
Wow.
That was literally like a dozen times.
Wow.
So now, as we know, streaming is ubiquitous. Dr. Shepard, a guy as old as you, who's been around since the early 60s, knows what streaming is. And I feel with AI, and I think Dr. Farhood kind of like with this earlier, is like, we don't know what AI really will be. Like we know it can do these things, but we don't know what its end game is going to be. Do you have any idea in terms of the end game when it comes to your industry?
Well, I can only say, and this comes so fast in the past few years, maybe just 3 or 4 years ago, there were pharmaceutical companies who disallowed using AI. It was not allowed to be used. And because they were unsure how it worked, did it reach into files that are confidential, pull them out, bring them out for the public to see? And we had certain country companies saying you can't use it. That's come so far now, because now, my feeling is, I think Ramin feels the same way, AI will affect every discipline that we talk about in the book. I don't know one that will not use AI in some way, whether it's just creative writing, whether it's looking at data. Just all the way from R&D, we now have descriptions of companies that have described and gotten approval for molecules that have been developed by AI, taking all the data together. So to me, it's not a question of will it be important? It's got to be now that people need to be working on this. And I think people feel a little overwhelmed by that, because how do you put your arms around all of this? So I think one way, of course, as people come out from training, that should be a part of their training. I know I talked about medical school where I went. I think medical school now will have major courses on AI and how it addresses everything from diagnosis to talking to your patients to writing up your notes, et cetera, and even on as far as how to do clinical studies. So it's here to stay and will continue to increase.
And the ultimate AI optimist, usually in the argument, like the argument to the AI is going to end the world and it's going to be Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Then the other camp is like, no. AI is going to be the one that cures cancer, finds a cure for diseases we have not been able to cure. Are you guys as optimistic about that? Dr. Farhood, I'll start with you. Are you guys optimistic that it could lead to that?
I do. I personally do. I think I look at AI, just like what Kirk was talking about, as a tool. It's a tool that is going to help us to go through the data that is already existed for maybe thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of patients, or hundreds of thousands of articles and the data that has already been published. And if we use that tool correctly, right, with making sure that there is also a human that actually can make sense from it, right, it will definitely be in a position that it will take us to the next level. But that's my personal opinion, that it's definitely has a really great advantage in everywhere, but especially also in science as well.
All right, let's keep the optimism going, Dr. Shepard. Let's look ahead. What makes you optimistic about oncology drug development as it moves now? Yeah, obviously you're optimistic, or you guys wouldn't have written this book, but like what in terms of just like the ephemeral stuff, like the stuff we don't see in text, like what makes you optimistic about the future of development in your industry?
Well, for me, recently in the past maybe 10 years, it's been the expansion of the mechanisms we're looking at to tackle cancer. So you look at major drugs like the IOs, the ICIs, et cetera, they're affecting the cancer from immunotherapy type of treatment. So to me, there's expansion now as far as the different ways of shooting at the target, which I think are really, really important. And I think there's more of a coming together of people working together. You see a lot of partnerships as far as people coming together to develop the cancer cures. So I'm really optimistic. I think for a while we were on a plateau with chemotherapy, more traditional chemotherapy than the targeted therapy. But now I think it's really starting to open up again. And the recognition that we have, as I mentioned before, ways of identifying the subgroups of cancer that we can successfully treat those without perhaps treating the rest of the cancer, that we at least have treatments for that type of cancer.
Nice. Dr. Farhood, let's keep the optimism train rolling. What are you feeling about it?
I was reading something to the fact that there are over 2,200 companies that they are in some stage of either clinical discovery or preclinical studies, or they're in a phase 3, and or they have marketed products already in the market. If you would have go back in 20 years from now or 15 years from now, I didn't look up what it was years ago, but 2,000 companies focusing on treatment, cure, for one therapeutic area. We're not talking about 100 different therapeutic area. It's amazing. It's going so fast. It's at a relentless pace, if you think about it, with the new therapies and the mechanisms that emerge faster than almost any other field. And I think that's amazing for the patients.
Awesome. The book is Voices of Oncology, Fostering a Collaborative Community of Experts to Accelerate Cancer Cures. Dr. Shepard, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dr. Farhood, thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Dr. Farhood and Dr. Shepard, go to theauthoritycompany.com.